Welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast about life, love, loss, and the truths we discover along the way. Together, we'll explore the struggles that shape us, the lessons we carry, and the hope that keeps us moving forward. This is more than stories. It's honesty, it's healing, it's real. Let's get started. And now your host, Glen Nunes.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in and sitting in with me today. Have you ever held on to something so tightly that it started destroying you? Maybe a dream, a person, an outcome, a relationship, or something different, maybe a future that you were convinced was supposed to happen. And the harder you held on, the more it slipped through your fingers, like holding on to a handful of sand and it just keeps falling through your fingers. We've all heard the phrase, never give up, right? Everybody says that, never give up, never give up. You see the memes and you see the motivational books and the motivational speakers, never give up. You even hear it in sermons all the time, right? But what if there comes a moment when holding on becomes more destructive than letting go? What if surrender isn't weakness? What if detachment isn't quitting? What if the very thing standing between you and your peace is the thing that you've been fighting the hardest to keep? So today, we're talking about something I believe most people misunderstand. The power of divine detachment. Not giving up, not becoming cold, not stopping caring, but learning the difference between trusting God and trying to play God. And for some of us, that may be the hardest lesson we'll ever learn. There were people who spent their life savings to buy tickets for the Titanic, and they missed the boat by 5 minutes because of a traffic delay. And they stood on the dock crying because they thought their life was ruined. They spent this money, they didn't get on the ship. And 2 days later, they realized that missing that ship was the only reason they were still breathing. Stop crying over the doors God forcefully slammed in your face, because it wasn't a setback. It was divine interception. True freedom begins the moment that you stop trying to fix a burning house from a fire that you did not start. I hope you get something out of this today, and hopefully it'll encourage you, because we're moving forward and we're moving in a positive direction here. So I'm your host, Glen Nunes, and first and foremost, I want to thank every single person who subscribed and the people that have shared my podcast, who have downloaded it, and being a part of this journey. This Cracked Open community is growing every week, and all your raw support means absolutely everything to me. It really does, because I go through my ups and downs in life, and there's times I say I'm going to quit. There's times I say I'm going to stop doing the podcast, and then I just keep going, and it keeps growing. So thank you for that. Thank you for helping me push forward, because it helps me as much as it helps you. And before we dive into today's main topic, I need to share a major personal update with you all. Okay, so I don't like to tie my episodes into specific holidays or seasons, and the reason is the truth shouldn't have an expiration date. But this is just a definitive moment in my life. This might be the best format to share this on. So I made a major decision to step down as the president of Music Gives and pass the torch. I am done. I've given my entire life sacrificing for my family, raising my kids. I raised 5 kids and pouring my blood, my sweat, and my soul into charities. And I love it. And I've always loved helping the local community and knowing exactly where the help is going. But right now, my cup's running empty, and stepping away isn't about being selfish. It's about protecting my peace, and I don't know exactly where God is taking me next, but I'm laying down the burden so he can lead me that way. So today I'm choosing peace, and I'm hoping somebody takes the torch here and maybe continues the Music Gives. I was going to stay on as like maybe a consultant or something in that capacity, but I've decided I don't want to even do that. I just want to buy a ticket, be one of you guys. That's where I'm going moving forward. And I wanted to share this with you before I dove into the topic today, because for a long time, people have been trying to talk me out of walking away from the organization. And honestly, I was on the fence, but a conversation just happened right after Billy's Bash, the last event we did, and it changed everything. One of the guys that helped out with me, he's a good friend, and he wanted to turn this into an annual event, and he suggested that moving forward, maybe we could raise the money and give the money to the American Cancer Society. Now look, I love the Jimmy Fund and I love the American Cancer Society. I love big organizations like that and all the research they do. But in that exact moment, a light bulb clicked off in my head. I realized that our missions are completely different. And this has happened before a couple of years ago with somebody else that was in the organization. My heart has never been into writing checks to massive corporate charities where the money gets lost in payroll and administration and things like that. I'm not saying those organizations aren't great. They are. But my mission statement, what God had put in my soul from day one, was to put my actual effort into helping real individual people right here in our local community. That would include family, friends, local musicians, and people like that. I wanted to touch lives where we can actually see the impact and hold their hands and get to know them and let them become part of our Music Gives family. It's a great feeling. We have many people who have done that. But like I said, this is actually the second time. It's not a conflict. I don't want to really call it a conflict. It's more of a conflict of the mission. But this is the second time this has come up over the years. So when that light bulb went off, I knew it was just time. I just don't want any conflict, division, or anybody doing this for any reason that they don't want to do it for. And I don't want this to be about just me. And if they want to take this organization down the corporate path, I bless them. But I'm laying down my president title. I'm passing the torch completely. I was thinking about maybe being a consultant or doing things like that, but I decided I'm not going to be a consultant. I don't want to stay involved in the background or anything. If they continue it, I will gladly just buy a ticket and sit in the crowd. I'm very excited to do that. And I'm choosing to detach because my season there is done. I have to move forward and I have to make major changes in my life. And I have to stay true to my integrity. It's what I feel in my heart. So I've decided to do that. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset when they hear this. But don't worry. I think other people can handle it. And I'm hoping they can push this forward and maybe take it to places I couldn't take it. Who knows? Maybe I was holding the organization back. Who knows? Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. But as always, I want to start by thanking each one of you who continues to listen, subscribe, and share the podcast and send me the messages and support what I'm doing here. And as I said, if you've been here since the beginning, or if this is your first episode listening, thank you for spending your day with me. My hope has always been that something said on this microphone helps someone feel a little less alone, a little more understood, and maybe gives them a little hope to keep moving forward. Today we're talking about a topic that has become one of the hardest lessons in my life, the power of divine detachment. And what does it mean to let go without giving up? What does it mean to stop trying to control people, control situations, outcomes, and futures that were never ours to control in the first place? And how do we find peace when our heart desperately wants to hold on? So we're going to talk about all of that today. So grab yourself a coffee, take a walk, do what you got to do, go for a ride, or just relax on the couch, sit back and listen, whatever you're doing today. This is Cracked Open. We're going to get it cracked open today. And that brings me directly to what the episode is called, the power of divine detachment. Let's define what detachment actually means because people get it twisted. It's not cold, malicious, or bitter. Detachment is the intentional, quiet decision to stop letting external chaos dictate your internal peace. It means that you love yourself enough to step out of the confusion and off the emotional roller coaster. And it's the moment that you realize that there's things that are out of your control and you really have to move forward. So before I go any further, I think it's important that we define what we're actually talking about. Because when most people hear the word detachment, they immediately think it's giving up. They think it means quitting or letting someone go or letting a situation go. Or they think it means not caring anymore. They think it means becoming cold, bitter, distant, or emotionally shut down. But divine detachment is none of those things, not one of them. Divine detachment is not giving up on people. It's giving up on the illusion that you can control someone or maybe a situation. You can't. We cannot play God. It's understanding that you can love somebody deeply without carrying the weight of their choices. You can pray for somebody without trying to rescue them. And you can care about someone without allowing their decisions to determine your peace. And you can leave the door unlocked without standing in the doorway waiting for them to walk through it. And I think saying it plainly is divine detachment is that moment when we stop trying to play God. It's when we finally admit that we cannot force healing, force change, force love, force growth, force honesty, or force another human being to become what we think they should be. And if you believe in divine intervention, then you know what? You heard me say it over and over. It's God's decision in the end. So what's going to happen is going to happen. So don't get discouraged. I want this to be positive. Do not get discouraged, okay? And it's not easy. It's very difficult to think that way because most of us don't realize how much of our suffering comes from trying to control things that were never ours to control. We come attached to the outcomes, attached to timelines, attached to expectations, attached to the version of life that we thought was supposed to happen. And when reality refuses to cooperate with our plans, we suffer. And we can suffer real bad. It's not fun. I wouldn't wish my suffering on anyone. Divine detachment doesn't mean that you stop caring. It means that you trust God enough to release your grip. That's all it is. It's the difference between saying, I don't care anymore, and saying, I care deeply, but I can no longer carry this. I can't do it. One statement comes from bitterness, and the other comes from wisdom. One comes from exhaustion, and the other comes from surrender. And today, we're going to talk about why learning the difference may be one of the most powerful lessons a person can ever learn. So let's look at the hard facts of the healing process. If you have mental health issues and you need a professional therapist to help you process your own life, that is a sign of immense strength. But when you are spending hours on a therapist's couch solely because of the damage someone else is actively doing to you, that's a warning sign. And it's not love. It's a trap that will completely ruin your life if you don't cut the cord. The very first step of detachment is eliminating the static. You have to delete pictures. You have to get rid of reminders in your house. You have to get rid of social media or stop looking at it. And who cares what they're doing anyway? Okay, if they don't want to be with you, who really cares? And I'm talking about a relationship, about detaching. We're going to talk about several forms of detachment. But specifically right now, I'm talking about a relationship. But as I said, who cares what they're doing? Let them live in it. And the online stuff, it's a heavily curated, painted picture designed to make people look happy and to make other people look less happier or make other people feel less happier. That's all it is. But trust me, behind the digital mask, it's an absolute catastrophe most of the time. So stop watching a fake show and focus on your own chapter. You guys all know what Photoshop is, and you know what AI can do now. You can put a face on anybody, you can change this, you can put a background, you can do all this stuff. That's what you're seeing. You're not seeing reality. So don't let this stuff eat you up. It's not worth your health. And that brings me to the let them rule. There's a woman, she's got that big podcast going, the let them rule. She's not somebody who I'm interested in following because I watched her a few times because I do a ton of research and I watch a lot of podcasters and a lot of YouTubers. But she pushes that let them rule. It does make sense though. It is the ultimate lesson in self-worth. I actually heard Mel say this. Her name is Mel, and I heard her say this in her podcast. If you know what you brought to the table, but the person chooses a lower option or a miserable situation, she says, let them. They deserve to live with the reality of their choices, and you deserve to be free of a burden trying to save them. And that's her theory. And I love analogies because Jesus always spoke in analogies and parables, and I do it myself. I talked about the high wire and the safety net in my last episode. That was my analogy that I just thought of in my head. And as I was listening to Mel talk about the let them theory, I thought of fasting. If you don't know what the definition of fasting is, it's you give something up for a while. And I thought of it like a fast. You have to physically fast from the toxic energy and refuse to get stuck in the bullshit. And that's what I got out of hers. And one of the reasons why divine detachment is so difficult is because our brains are literally wired to hold on. And as I was doing my research on this topic, I found psychologists talk about something called attachment to outcomes. Many of them talk about this. Attachment to outcomes. And it's simple English. It means we become emotionally invested, not just in people, but in a future that we imagine with them. And it takes two. You both have to be on the same page and in the same book, in the same chapter. And as I said, sometimes we're not grieving the person. We're grieving the future we created in our minds, the vacations we planned, the retirement we imagined, the reconciliation we expected. Maybe an apology. Maybe in your situation, you're expecting an apology. I don't know what your situation is, but maybe someone needs to apologize to you. I don't know. And also we think about the life that we thought was coming. And that's when many people get stuck. And all this research has shown that the human brain experiences social rejection and emotional loss in many of the same regions that process physical pain. So think about that. Heartbreak doesn't just feel painful. To the brain, it is pain. And that's why people lose sleep. That's why they lose weight. That's why they lose their appetite. That's why they replay conversations 1,000 times over and over in their heads. And that's why they become exhausted trying to solve problems that cannot be solved just from one side. And another truth is this. Most anxiety, it comes from trying to control things that are outside our control. You can't control it. Let it go. I don't want to be blunt, but it's pretty plain as day. We want certainty. We want answers. We want guarantees. We want timelines. But life doesn't work that way. And the more tightly we grip to what we cannot control, the more anxiety we create. And here's another fact that changes my thinking. Acceptance is not agreement. A lot of people think if they accept something, they're saying it's okay. But that's not true. You can accept reality without liking it. And you can accept the loss without approving of it. You can accept another person's choices without agreeing with them. Acceptance simply means acknowledging what is true. And once we acknowledge what is true, we can finally decide what to do next. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about letting go is that it means weakness. But in reality, letting go often requires more strength than holding on. I've lived it. Holding on is familiar, and holding on feels productive. And holding on gives us the illusion that we're still doing something. But sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop chasing, stop forcing, stop fixing, stop rescuing, and trust God with the outcome. Okay? This is what I'm saying. It's not giving up. Hang on to your faith. And if you believe something in your heart is going to happen, stick to it. Because if you pray, ask, seek, and knock, it's probably going to happen. And if it's divine intervention, it's going to happen. You're not going to stop it. The other person's not going to stop it. God's going to make it happen. It's going to be His will and no one else's. So hang in there. And like I said, this is positive. I don't want you to get discouraged and take this the wrong way. Divine intervention is a real thing, and it's the only thing. But I want to say divine detachment, it's not passive. It's active trust. It's saying, I've done what I can do. I've said what I needed to say. I've loved the best way I know how. And I know I'm placing the rest in God's hands. You know what's in your heart. And you can't control what's in other people's hearts. But if something is placed in your heart and branded in your heart, just hang on to it. God reads your heart and your mind. When you place everything in God's hands, that's not weakness. That's faith. That's true faith. And for many of us, it may be one of the hardest acts of faith that we'll ever practice. If you all remember the story I told you about this couple in my last episode, the blowout fight between an owner of this club and his girlfriend right in front of the crowd, in front of me, I should say. I ended up going back there a few days later. I wanted to see if they were okay, and I wanted to see what happened because it was bothering me. And I figured if I live something and witness something, and I could help somebody from my experience, and I don't want to cross lines, and I don't want to offend people, but I feel the need sometimes, if I can help somebody, I'm not going to sit on the sideline. I'm going to jump in the game. I'm going to throw that challenge flag in, and I'm going to discuss it. That's just how I am. Anyways, I wanted to see if these people were okay, and they were both there. When I walked in, I was happy to see they were both there. The tension was still thick. He was snapping at her about all kind of things, and I had a conversation with them, and then I had a conversation with her and him separately. And one of the things she told me was that he doesn't know how to handle his liquor or his temper. I waited for the right moment, and I offered to buy them both a drink. And when I got both of their undivided attention, I looked them both in the eye. And I didn't go there to preach. I came there to warn them and to help them. So anyway, I told them briefly about my situation and my experience. I told them about my 27 days. In the song I wrote, I call it 26 days, but I'm going to the 27th day. Anyway, I talked about the 27 days where I let pride keep me from calling the true love of my life, and how this parasite stepped right in and wedged right into our life. But, as I said, certain things are out of your control, right? But anyway, I was explaining to him how this parasite stepped right into that gap that ruined everything. So I told them straight up, don't let pride get in the way and throw your whole life away together. And get this, she told me what her full-time job was. And I'm not going to say it because I don't want anybody to know who this is. And she went into her profession with me. I let her speak. And she did say to me that he has a major problem and he doesn't know how to handle himself and all this. But there's two sides to every story. I know how that goes. I know people have said stuff about me out of anger and stuff that wasn't true, and things that let me down. In other words, there's three sides to the story: his, hers, and the truth. But anyways, I want you to look at the irony of that. You can have all the degrees in the world. You can also be trapped in a toxic loop at the same time. I don't know this situation. He could be a controlling person. He could be a narcissist. Who knows? But with all your knowledge, the tools just don't work when you're living in it. And pride can blind the smartest people. And when she stepped away, I had a chance to speak to him. And he acted like he didn't care much. I saw the pride painted all over his face. But one thing I did know, he did hear me. So I dropped the truth right in their lap. Then I stepped back, and then I applied the let them rule. I thought I did my part as a human being and a man of God, and then I detached. You cannot force people to save their own house from burning. And if they work their things out, then so be it. I was just trying to help them with my experience, and I don't know them personally, but going back to my personal situation that turned into something it should have never turned into, if I can help somebody else avoid that through my experience, I'm going to do it. And I think that's the decent thing to do. As we go on with this topic, I'm going to get into some stuff, how other people look at this differently than I did. And I've lived enough in life to see this situation play out a few times. And I'll tell you from first-hand experience, the worse the situation gets for the person who walked away, the better your life gets once you actually let it go. But it's always easier said than done, isn't it? So this message right here, it goes out to the men listening. But women, you can put yourself right in this exact same position. It's easy for an outsider to say, just walk away. But it's a completely different monster when your heart is tangled in the wreckage. And let me tell you something about the people on the sidelines. And as I said, when I'm on this emotional roller coaster, I'm going to keep doing these. I'm going to quit. And when somebody either messages me or texts me or comes up to me, or I experience an actual interaction with somebody, it makes me come right back to this mic. So something happened to me just recently. I was at a gig and somebody came up to me, and under the mask that they had on, the mask of trying to help me, he started dropping cruel comments designed to do nothing but crush my heart, stir up confusion, and predict a failed outcome. And knowing that it hurts me terribly when anybody talks bad about anybody I love, let's look closely at how the enemy operates under the mask of friendship or advice. When this dude came up to me at that gig, he wasn't trying to heal my heart. He was kind of masquerading his own misery as wisdom. He brought words explicitly designed to pierce right through my chest. He knew it was going to hurt me. And he's kind of hoping to witness me collapse. Because misery doesn't just love company. Misery is desperate for it. It's so true. But I looked right past his mask. I refused to let his toxic projections conquer my night, or sabotage my hope, or dilute my faith. When someone drops poison in your ear under the guise of objective opinion, you have to recognize it for what it is. Pure, unadulterated evil. It's what it is. You hold your ground, stand firm in what God promised you, and you let them remain trapped in the small, bitter world that they built for themselves. But what really struck me was how people seem more interested in feeding your pain than helping you heal from it. Again, misery loves company. We've all heard that phrase. And sometimes people don't hand you hope. They hand you gasoline, don't they? They don't help you carry the burden. They help you make it heavier. They enjoy it, actually. Divine detachment means learning to detach not only from outcomes, but from the voices that keep pulling you back into pain. You know what? People love to play God, don't they? They love to look at your pain and tell you exactly how it's going to end. Like they know. They're so sure. But here's the reality of divine detachment. I don't give a shit what they think. I really don't. They don't put the boots on my feet, and they don't write the script for my life. And the only opinion that matters when you're sitting in the dumpster is what God thinks, what you think, and what the people near you and dear to your heart think. And if critics listen to this podcast and think I'm whining or crying or hoping for the impossible, like I'm delusional or something, just turn it off and go listen to something else. I'm not trying to be rude. I do want followers and I want to help people, but if someone's listening to my podcast and they're using ammunition against me because they may know I'm vulnerable or my heart is aching, what they don't know is my heart is not made of stone. I hold the heart in my hand, my logo, that's made of stone, but my heart's made of flesh, and I'm real, and my feelings are real. So never dilute your faith to make cynical people feel comfortable. It looked terrible for Moses at the Red Sea, didn't it? It looked completely dead for Jairus' daughter. But God specializes in the moments where the human percentages hit absolute zero. So hold on to your clean, pure hope. And when the breakthrough happens and the mockers come crawling back pretending they were cheering for you, you don't hit them with malice or resentment or anger. You just smile and you say something positive. And you let your peace be their lesson. True victory doesn't need revenge. It doesn't. God says the revenge is in his hands. So I want to share something with you that I noticed in my own life, and maybe you noticed it too. I call it the static of the sidelines. Imagine you're watching a football game. The players are on the field. They're running the plays. They're getting hit. They're making mistakes. They're winning. They're losing. They're living the game. But on the sidelines, that's where all the noise is. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody knows what should happen next. Everybody has advice. Everybody has a theory. Everybody thinks they know the outcome. And that being said, I hear this all the time, and most of you know what I'm talking about. Some people are obsessed with sports. They make it part of their life, like it's so important. It means so much to them. I don't. I'm not like that. And me, I played sports my whole life, and I was into sports too. But it's not my life, and I could care less about sports. I don't get into it like some people. They act like it's a religion or it's their lifeline. I don't understand it. But if some people, it's supposed to be entertainment, but people act like it's a lifeline. I have season tickets to the Patriots, and I love when you hear the yappers on the sideline. The coach does a play or something happens and there's, why are they not punting, or why are they not doing this, why are they not doing that, this is what they should do, and then the next play goes against everything they said and it works, and then they're cheering for the team. Hypocrites. I call them coaches on the sideline. Not just in sports, life can be the same way. When we're attached to an outcome, we stop living our own life and we become spectators in someone else's. We sit on the sidelines watching, waiting, analyzing, overthinking, checking, wondering, looking for signs, looking for clues, looking for the proof that things are moving in the direction that we want them to move. And before we know it, we stop participating in our own life because we're too busy watching someone else's. And I know this because I've done it. I've spent days, weeks, months at times waiting for answers that never came, waiting for clarity, waiting for change, waiting for another person to make a decision, waiting for life to finally make sense. And while I was doing all that, life just kept moving. The sun still came up. People still laughed. People still cried. Opportunities still passed by. New people still entered the room. And I was sitting there listening to the static, the noise, the endless mental chatter, the what ifs, the maybe tomorrows, the if onlys, the whys, why. And here's what I finally realized. The static never gives you answers. It only gives you more static. The longer you listen to it, the louder it becomes. And that's why divine detachment is so powerful. Because detachment doesn't silence the noise overnight. But it does allow you to step away from the radio, doesn't it? It allows you to say, I don't need to monitor this every minute. I don't need to solve this tonight. I don't need to carry this every waking moment. One of the greatest lies we tell ourselves is that if we worry long enough, we'll eventually arrive at peace. But worry never becomes peace. Control never becomes peace. Obsession never becomes peace. Only surrender becomes peace. We need to talk about the mechanics of internal peace. True peace is not something that you actually fight or manufacture. It's the direct residual byproduct of complete and total surrender. You'll never experience the stillness of God while your knuckles are white from trying to grip the steering wheel of a situation that you were never meant to control. You have to lay your weapons down at the altar, look at the words of Christ in the Sermon on the Mount, and specifically Matthew 6:34. He explicitly states, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Think about the profound psychology of that verse. Jesus is teaching us the ultimate lesson in divine boundary setting. Worrying is an attempt by a human ego to manipulate a future that belongs exclusively to God. It acts as a thief that robs you of today's strength to fight a ghost that doesn't even exist yet. And the moment that you say, Lord, I cannot fix this house, I cannot change someone's heart, I cannot control this timeline, I surrender it all to you. That is the exact millisecond that worry breaks the peace that surpasses all human understanding and takes up residency in your spirit. Control never becomes peace, and obsession never becomes peace. Only surrender becomes peace. Now let's go back to that scripture, Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. That's a different translation. It's more simple. And think about that. Jesus never said tomorrow won't have problems. He never said life would be easy. He said stop carrying tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. Most of us are exhausted because we're carrying Tuesday on Monday. We're carrying next month today. And we're carrying outcomes that haven't even happened yet. And peace, it never comes from carrying more. Peace comes from releasing more. And Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Notice Paul didn't say understanding would guard your heart. He said peace would. Sometimes peace arrives before answers do. And maybe that's why so many of us are exhausted. We're trying to carry things God never asked us to carry. We're trying to manage outcomes we were never meant to manage. We're trying to write chapters in books that don't even belong to us. The static of the sidelines keep us focused on everybody else's game. And divine attachment invites us back onto our own field, back into our own life, and back into our own story. Because while we're staring at one closed door, we might be missing every open door that God keeps placing right in front of us. And we usually pray for God to open doors. But sometimes the greatest miracle is the door that He forcefully slams on our face to save us. Look at history. In 1950, in a small town in Nebraska, a church choir was scheduled to meet at 7:30 p.m. 15 different people, completely unrelated. They were all hit with sudden, unexplainable delays that night. Every one of them. One of them, a car wouldn't start. Someone fell asleep. Another one got delayed in a minor chore. But every single one of them was late. And at 7:35, that church completely exploded from a gas leak. Their frustration and broken plans weren't a punishment. It was divine interception. It's a true story. And when you apply that to your relationships, you have to ask yourself, is this a tragedy? Or is it God keeping me off a sinking ship? Or is He fixing someone, fixing you, if reconciliation is in His plans, to be who you exactly are from the situation? And sometimes if someone is treating you like a fool and running off and doing whatever they have to do and toxic rebounds and all this other crazy nonsense, it might be God's way of keeping you off that boat. God will allow you to feel the temporary sting of a broken heart if it means saving you from a permanently ruined life. He knows. He knows. We don't know. And I know in a couple of my episodes I've talked about the monkey trap. You guys remember that story where the hunters, they would take a hollowed out coconut and they would put a piece of fruit or sweet rice or something inside the coconut, and the opening of the hole would just be large enough for the monkey to put his hand in. But as soon as the monkey would reach in and grab the fruit or the food, once it clenched its fist and closed it around what it wanted, it couldn't pull its hand back out. The opening was large enough for an open hand, but too small for a clenched fist. The monkey wasn't trapped because of the coconut. It was trapped because it was refusing to let go. So think about that for a moment. It's a great analogy. Freedom was available the entire time. The monkey didn't need more strength. It didn't need more intelligence. It didn't need someone to rescue it. It simply needed just to release what it was holding on to. Sometimes we're that monkey, and I've talked about it in previous podcasts. We're holding on to a person, a dream, a future, an outcome, a resentment, a betrayal, a version of life that we thought was supposed to happen. And we're exhausted because we're trying to drag that coconut with us everywhere we go. And the amazing thing is that God often doesn't remove the coconut. He simply asks us to open our hand. Because the freedom that we're praying for may be waiting right on the other side of what we're unwilling to release. Divine detachment is not losing what you love. It's trusting God enough to stop gripping it so tightly. Sometimes the miracle isn't getting what you wanted. Sometimes the miracle is finding peace after you finally let it go. Because divine detachment isn't just about letting go. It's about learning what belongs in our hands and what belongs in God's hands. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And the point is that peace is never found in monitoring someone else's life. It's found in returning to your own. And that brings me to another picture. Hold your fists closed for a moment. When your hands are closed, you can't receive anything, can you? You can't accept a gift. You can't shake a hand. You can't embrace someone, and you can't receive what God may be trying to place in your life. Sometimes we spend so much energy holding on to what was that we never make room for what could be. Divine detachment is not throwing something away. It's opening our hands. It's simply saying, Lord, I love this. I care about this. This matters to me. It might matter to you more than anything that's ever mattered to you in your life. But you have to say, Lord, I trust you more than I trust my grip. And I think about that interaction I told you about with that couple, the harsh words, the hurt feelings, two people digging their heels in. I'm standing there watching it unfold, and I remember thinking, wow, I know this road. I've been down it. I know where pride leads. I know where the stubbornness leads. It's not good. I also know what happens when two people can become more committed to being right than they are to finding peace. And what stuck with me later was that I couldn't control their choices. I couldn't force them to reconcile. I couldn't force them to understand. I couldn't force healing for them. All I could do was recognize the lesson. You pass it off, and hopefully you help them. And divine detachment, it's not because you stop caring, but because you finally understand that some battles belong to God. Some lessons belong to other people. And some journeys are not yours to walk for them. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes we're exhausted, not because life is heavy, but because we're carrying things that we were never meant to carry. We're carrying people, outcomes, decisions, timelines, answers. And all the while, God's saying, put it down. Put it down. Let it go. Trust me. Let me carry what you can't. It'll work out. If he's got a plan for you, give it to him. It sounds easy, I know. But you have to try and do the best you can at letting him carry what you cannot. Because the goal of divine detachment isn't to love less. It's to trust more. It's to open up your hand out of that coconut and let the food go. Step away from the sidelines. Open your hands and trust that whatever God has for you next doesn't require you to hold your breath waiting for someone else to decide your future. That's the bottom line. And the spiritual principle in this is as old as time. Look at Genesis 13, the story of Abraham and Lot. They were family, but chaos and fighting entered into the camp. Abraham didn't argue or force a toxic situation to work. He used the ultimate power move, spiritual detachment. He looked at Lot and he said, let's separate. If you go left, I'll go right. He let Lot choose the lush, easy land, and Abraham took the high ground. And look what happens the exact moment Abraham detached. The scripture says right after Lot left, God spoke to Abraham and said, lift up your eyes and look. All the land that you see, I will give to you. Sometimes God cannot show you your territory, your blessings, or your true future until you completely detach from the people and the crazy things that are causing chaos in your camp. And when the critics mock you while you're down in the wreckage, trying to rebuild your life or hang on to your hope, remember Nehemiah chapter 4. When Nehemiah was rebuilding those broken walls of Jerusalem, critics named Sanballat and Tobiah, they stood on the sidelines and mocked him. They were saying even a fox climbing on his wall would break it down. They wanted him to drop his tools and come down to fight them. But Nehemiah, he didn't argue. He kept his trowel in one hand and his faith in the other, and he just kept building. So don't come off your wall to argue with a mocker. Let them mock the stones while God rebuilds your fortress. Let them do it. And look at the example of Jesus in Gethsemane. This is the anchor of biblical truth in divine detachment. Because divine detachment isn't I don't care. It's not my will, but yours be done. Jesus didn't want suffering. He didn't want the cross. He asked if the cup could pass from him. Yet, he surrendered the outcome to the Father. That is the greatest example of divine detachment in history. Look at Abraham. Abraham waited decades for a son that God promised him. And then after he got that son, God asked him to place Isaac on the altar. And the lesson wasn't sacrifice. The lesson was, do you trust the gift more than the giver? And Abraham, he opened his hands and God provided. And how about the prodigal son's father? This is one of the most powerful because it mirrors what many of us experience. The father didn't chase. He didn't manipulate. He didn't rescue. He didn't run after his son into the pig pen. He stayed on the porch. He loved. He waited. He kept the light on. And when the son returned, he welcomed him with open arms. That's divine detachment. Not abandonment, not indifference. It's love without control. It was divine intervention for that son to come home to that father. So it all comes down to love without control. Let it play out. Leave it in God's hands. If it's going to happen, if someone's coming back to you, they're coming back. And when they come back, you try to, I don't even know if you can imagine the feeling that would be like. So hopefully we learned from these stories, and that leads me into the parable of the broken plow. There's an old story about a farmer whose most prized possession was a strong, beautiful horse. One day the horse ran away, and the villagers all gathered to express their sorrow, saying, "What terrible luck." And the farmer simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" And a few days later, the horse returned, bringing several wild horses with it. The villagers cheered, "What wonderful luck." And the farmer again replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" Then the next week, the farmer's only son was training one of those wild horses. He fell off the horse, he broke his leg, and the villagers shook their heads in pity. And the farmer just said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So shortly after, an army marched through the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man to fight in the war. And because his son had the broken leg, the farmer's son was the only one left behind. The villagers wept at the tragedy, but the farmer whispered, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The takeaway from this is true detachment is the realization that we cannot see the whole picture. When we stop fighting the changing seasons of life and detach from how we think things should happen, we make room for divine guidance. I will say again, detachment isn't loving less. It's trusting God more. It really is. Every one of these stories teaches us the same lesson. Open hands, trust God, release control, and let Him do what only He can do. Stop playing God. Really. And as we start to wrap things up, I want to talk about a little bit of music here. I put together a specific playlist for this episode. The link is right below in the description. I want you to pay close attention to one song. It's Let It Be by the Beatles. It'll be in the description. It's the absolute definition of letting go of control and allowing a situation to unfold without forcing a result. So stop trying to fix the unfixable. Just let it be. So hit that link in the description and download the playlist and let the music speak to the spaces where your heart is tired. And I encourage you not to just listen to the songs, but listen to the lyrics, listen to the message, and listen to what the artist is trying to say, because music has a way of reaching places that words alone sometimes can't. In our episode today, Divine Detachment, it is letting go, trusting God, releasing control, and finding peace when life doesn't go according to plan. So every song in the playlist, hopefully it touches part of the journey that you're on. Some of you out there, maybe you're about to surrender. Maybe some are just trying to heal. Maybe some of you are just trying to move forward. Maybe some of you are just trying to accept what you cannot change. And others are just simple reminders that even when life hurts, we're still moving. We're moving forward. We're still growing. We're still learning. And we know sometimes that song can say exactly what your heart's trying to say. Sometimes a song gives you hope. Sometimes it gives you a new perspective or a perspective. And sometimes a song simply reminds us that you're not alone. So when the episode ends, take a few minutes and go visit the playlist. Maybe go for a walk, take a ride, maybe listen to it on your headphones when you're at work. Go sit on the porch, sit on your couch, lay in bed, I don't know. and let music do what music does best, because sometimes healing doesn't arrive through the answers. Sometimes it's just through a melody. And before we wrap up today, take a deep breath. I know you're exhausted. Hardship tries to convince us that we have permanently lost parts of who we are. The joy that once came naturally feels distant sometimes, and confidence feels buried sometimes. But those things are not gone. They're just waiting beneath the surface, sitting right there. They're growing deep roots during a season where nothing appears to be blooming. And one day, you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to recognize yourself again. And not because life became suddenly perfect, but because healing slowly made its way into the places that hurt. You don't have to conquer the entire future today. There is grace for you right now. Keep waking up, keep meeting the day, and let go of what you were never carried to hold. And I want to leave you with a few thoughts here. The biggest lesson I've learned is that divine attachment is not giving up. It's not about becoming cold or pretending you never cared. And it's certainly not about stopping love. Still love them. Don't give up. It's about releasing the need to control what was never yours to control. That's all it is. And maybe today you're holding on to a person. I don't know. I don't know your situation. Everyone's is different. Maybe you're holding on to a dream. Maybe you're holding on to a future that didn't unfold the way you thought it would. Maybe you're holding on to an apology that never came. Maybe you're holding on to an answer that may never arrive. Maybe you're holding on to every single thing I just listed. Whatever it is, ask yourself one question. Is this helping me move forward, or is this keeping me stuck? Because sometimes the very thing that we're fighting to keep is the thing that's keeping us trapped. I think about that monkey trap. I think about the static on the sidelines, about opening our hands, about Abraham placing Isaac on the altar, and about the father of the prodigal son standing on that porch, waiting. And I think about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." Every one of those stories points to the same truth. There comes a moment when faith requires release. A moment when we stop gripping. A moment when we stop chasing. A moment when we stop demanding answers and simply trust. And not because we understand. And not because we like the situation. And not because the pain is gone. Trust me, I get it. But because we finally realize that carrying it is crushing us. So here's my challenge to you this week. What are you carrying that God never asked you to carry? What are you trying to change? What outcome are you trying to force? What future are you trying to control? And what might happen if just for today you loosened your grip? Not forever, just for today. Maybe peace isn't waiting at the end of the chase. Maybe peace begins the moment that you stop running. And maybe the miracle isn't getting exactly what you wanted in your time. Leave it in God's time, because you might get that miracle. It might be better than you could have imagined. So just hang in there. And maybe the miracle is simply discovering that God is enough while you're waiting to see what happens next. And maybe divine detachment isn't the end of the story at all. Maybe it's the beginning of freedom, and the beginning of hope, and the beginning of trust. So let's bow our heads and take this to God. So, Lord Jesus, today I lift every single person listening to this podcast who is carrying a heavy heart. You see every burden, every relationship struggle, and every fear carried when nobody else is looking. Father, if there is unhealthy influences in our lives, remove them. If there are people standing in the way of our peace, our healing, or our future, move them aside in your perfect way and your perfect timing. You can do it. We know you can remove anything that seems impossible or difficult, or even something we think we can't handle. We know you can remove. We know you can remove the situation, maybe the person, maybe maybe the false hope, or maybe the bad dream. You can remove it all. We know this. So bring truth into every situation. Bring clarity where there is confusion. Bring strength where there is weakness. Heal what is broken, and please restore what can be restored. Remove pride, remove fear, and remove bitterness, and replace them with honesty, humility, wisdom, and most importantly, love. Give us the courage to detach from what drains us and the faith to trust you with the road ahead, even when we cannot see the destination. So today, we come before you carrying burdens. Some of us are carrying broken hearts. Some are carrying grief. Some of us are carrying loss. Some of us are carrying fear, carrying anger, carrying disappointment. Some of us are carrying people we love, people we miss, people we worry about, people we can't stop thinking about. So Lord, so many of us spend our lives trying to control things that only you can control. We try to force outcomes, we try to change hearts, we try to fix situations, we try to carry tomorrow before tomorrow even arrives, and we're exhausted. Help us understand the difference between responsibility and control. Show us what belongs in our hands, and show us what belongs in your hands. Give us the wisdom to know when to speak, to know when to act, and to know when to step back and trust you. And for those carrying that heartbreak today, please bring comfort. And those carrying the anxiety, bring them peace. And those carrying anger, bring them healing. And those carrying disappointment, bring them hope. And for those carrying grief, please bring them strength. And for those who feel trapped by circumstances they cannot change, remind them that their freedom does not depend on another person's choices. Their peace does not depend on another person's actions, and their future does not depend on another person's decisions, because you are still God, you are still working, still present, and you're still writing stories that we cannot see. So help us loosen our grip, help us to open our hands, help us to make moves that we need to make, and help us trust you with the things that keep us awake at night. And help us to trust you with these crazy things that occupy our minds and that break our hearts. And help us to remember that surrender is not weakness, it's faith. And please give us that courage to release what we were not meant to carry. And give us that strength to move forward and to walk forward. And give us peace in that waiting and in the hallway. We ask all this in the name of your Son's precious holy name, Jesus Christ. Amen. So, thank you for spending this time with me today. Remember that your path is being directed even when you're resting, and you don't have to carry what God never asked you to hold. And as we close this out, I want to leave you with one final thought. Maybe the greatest act of faith isn't holding on, it's letting go. Not because you stopped caring or stopped loving or stopped believing, but because you finally accepted that some things belong in God's hands and not in your own. And the truth is, most of us spend years trying to carry things we were never designed to carry. Other people's decisions, healing, choices, journeys, and responsibilities. And eventually, the weight becomes too much, doesn't it? Divine detachment is not giving up on someone. It's giving them to God. It's loving them without controlling, praying without forcing, hoping without obsessing, and trusting without demanding answers. I don't know what you're carrying today. If it's a relationship, if it's grief, regret, fear, maybe it's that future that didn't turn out how you wanted it to. Whatever it is, I know I said this a few times, but just remember, you don't have to carry what God never asked you to hold. And maybe freedom begins the moment that you finally put it down. Because I'm learning that I can't carry everything anymore. And thank you for spending the time with me. If this episode touched your heart, if it helped you, if it challenged you, or made you make a move, or maybe it made you think, Please share it with someone who may need to hear it today. And remember that your integrity is your legacy. Treat others the way you want to be treated. God has no favorites, and karma has no favorites. And remember, if you feel that God is tugging at your heart or on your heart, pay attention. This is Glen Nunes. You've been listening to Cracked Open. Until next time, open your hands, trust God, and keep moving forward. Keep your head up and stay true to your walk. Stay true to your worth and walk in peace. We'll talk next week. Goodbye for now. Love you all.
Thank you for listening to Cracked Open. If today's episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need a little light in their own dark season. Remember, even in brokenness, there's beauty waiting to be found. Every crack is a place where the light can shine through. Until next time, stay true, stay hopeful, and keep your heart open.